Dead Ends. Written by Jonathan Dunne. Narrated for you by the author. Dead Ends 5. Yucky. It was the middle of the night when the call came in. "Hello, you're through to Lisa at 112. What's your emergency?" A child's moaning voice came down the line of static.
"Please, help us."
My gut instinct told me that it was just a bunch of idle kids with nothing else to do with their time than to make a crank call. "Get off the line, or I'll have your call traced and you'll have the police on your doorstep. Someone else might have an actual emergency and you are obstructing the line. You are breaking the
Please, help us. We're just children."
The second cry gave me pause for thought, and that was the night I learned that your gut can be wrong sometimes. I wasn't sure if it was a boy or a girl, but I broke out in goosebumps all the same. It was the way the caller whimpered. It almost sounded like someone pretending to be just children. It was creepy. "Yes, hello, what's your emergency?" I repeated. I've got used to listening to frantic people on the other end of my phone line. But something struck me about this voice in the hundreds of panicked voices I've listened to over the last 12 months since I decided I needed to save lives, to save my own. A pause came down the line before a second child spoke.
"We're here."
"Where is here?" The second voice belonged to a girl, and I was sure now the first voice was that of a boy. Judging by their voices on the line, laced with odd white static, I placed them above 5 but below 10 years old. It was difficult to tell them apart at that age. "You know exactly how old they are, Janie?" Yes, there was something in those voices that prickled my conscience. The boy said,
"It smells bad down here. Yucky."
An odd echo came through my headset. My fingers trembled on the keyboard and I stopped taking notes. With a dry mouth, I asked, "What are your names?" I looked all about the call centre with furtive eyes, feeling nauseous as a weakness trickled down over me. "You know their names, Janie."
"James,"
groaned the boy. The girl wheezed.
"Megan, I can't breathe."
And that strange echo was also on the line when she spoke. They were together wherever they were. "And you know where they are?" Yes, I knew where they were. I just didn't want to admit it to myself yet. I wasn't ready for that. The boy James asked,
"Why did you say your name was Lisa? You're not Lisa."
A cold, clammy sweat broke out on my forehead on hearing that question. "Oh, what do you mean?" I checked myself. "Can you please tell me your emergency?" I asked, not wanting any of my colleagues in the cubicles to my left and right to hear me not following protocol.
"Your name is Janie,"
whispered the girl.
"Janie Slater, the widow Slater."
Giggles came down the line.
"But you put something in our food."
Then, in whispering unison, they repeated,
"The widow Slater, the widow Slater, the widow Slater,"
in quick-fire mechanical succession. In a terrified voice, Megan added,
"Where are you? Please save us. We can't breathe. You're the only one who can save us because you're the only one who knows where we are. You know where we are. You know where we live,"
cried the boy.
"We all live at number 2.
I screamed on cue and cut off the call before one child blurted out my home address. They record these calls, see? The conversation I just had was already on record, but at least I ended the call before anything self-incriminating could be recorded. I spasmed away from my desk, pulling my headset from my head and flinging it onto the table in front of me. I stumbled from my cubicle, staring wide-eyed at the headset, knowing the horror coming from inside it. The thing is this, I know there was nobody on the line. It's all my imagination, see? But sometimes it's just so real. How they sneak up on me and catch me unaware. I mean, so fucking real. The scariest thing in all of this is my imagination, which I will never outrun." The other call takers in the 112 office appeared from their cubicles, necks craning to discover the source of the commotion. Everyone witnessed their workmate Lisa screaming and flapping her hands out about her head as if a cloud of midges were biting at her. She was an odd person and had displayed erratic behaviour from the first day she began working at the 112 call centre just over a year ago. But she had never put on a show like the one she was putting on now. They watched her run screaming from the room, looking over her shoulders with wide eyes as she bolted through the door as if someone was chasing her. Her parting gift for her colleagues were her screams as she sprinted down the hallway, and that raw fear in her stark eyes they'd all seen when she'd glanced over her shoulder to see what was chasing her. Nothing was chasing her. At least, nothing Lisa's co-workers could see. As Lisa ran screaming from the building, the woman working in the cubicle on Lisa's right-hand side, Sonia, picked up her headset and listened. Frowning, she turned to her colleague Joe and handed him the headset to have a listen. That same perplexed expression bloomed on his face. "What is that noise?" Sonia asked. Joe answered, "Well, I think it's white noise. The real question is why it's there in the first place." "No, I'm not talking about white noise. I thought I heard faint voices." Joe scrunched up his face. "What are you talking about?" He pulled the headset on over his ears and squeezed the sponge into his ear holes. He closed his eyes and tried to drown out the surrounding white noise. Sonia witnessed the moment on her colleague's face when he heard the same as she did. There, very faint and lost in the warbling white noise, Joe made out voices. 2 voices. "Kids? Wakey, wakey, rise and shine." I thought I heard a knock before the woman's voice crept through my slumbering sleep. In my confusion, I opened my eyes to see a woman sitting by my side on the bed, staring into my face. My vision was blurry, but I was aware of another individual, a man, standing at the side of the bed behind her. "We heard you want to confess," came a woman's voice. Who are you?" I was lost in the dregs of a comatose sleep, and the midazolam, which the hillside staff injected into my median cubital vein, kept me groggy. Yes, I know what you're thinking. I could have just said vein, right? Wrong. When I was doing my research on the children, I learned all about the body and how it functions. The body is a little fucking miracle. Did you know that? Anyway, I got to know all the medical terms, Latin terms, for different parts of the body and how they work. It sort of stuck with me, see? It always struck me as odd how most people don't know how their own body works, but they know how to make it stop working. I asked them who they were for the second time. The woman answered, "We are upholders of justice." "Finally, please lock me up and throw away the key," I cried. "I want you to protect me from them. I'm tired of paying for my sins. They always know where to find me. They always know where to find me because they're inside my fucking head." "Whoa, hold your horses, Janie," said the woman. "What we need right now is for you to tell us everything from the beginning, the very beginning, and only then can you suffer for your heinous crime." "Your terrible sin," the man added. The woman next to me touched my hair and played with my split ends. "You haven't seen split ends before?" I asked with a cackle. She just looked at me with that nonplussed face of hers. It was a visage I wanted to slap. "Whatever about split ends," I said. "I'm at my wit's end, see, and I've gained the bad habit of plucking at my hair." My eyesight pulled into focus, and I really looked at them for the first time. "Wait, who called you?" Something didn't feel right. I was under the influence of a tranquilizer, but I was sure I hadn't called for anyone. Or had I? Maybe the horrid matron called for them. They call her the Owl Seagull. She thinks I'm putting on a crazy act just to stay in the comfort of my padded cell, hidden from the world and the netherworld. Everything is a figment of my imagination. The scariest thing in this asylum is the matron, but this is no act, see? Those kids haunt me. but they're ghosts living in my head. They have medication for stuff like that in this place. This is the best place for me. I'm convinced it is the only place where I can protect myself from myself." "We were called," said the woman, not giving away any information. "Because you want to confess," added the standing man. And this time it wasn't a question. Who did you say you are?" The woman sitting on my bed said, "You can call me One," gesturing behind her. "And this is Two." "Don't you have names? Why do you look familiar?" "One and Two. That's all you need to know for now," said the sitting woman. Two said, "And we're asking the questions here." My eyesight sharpened a little more. I wouldn't like to get on the wrong side of the one they called Two. He had a mean face and haunting eyes. I've seen those eyes before. Those eyes have seen things they were never meant to see. I see those peepers every time I look in the mirror, which is why I smashed every mirror in the house. They say a broken mirror will bring the person who broke it 7 years of bad luck. I've smashed 4 mirrors in my place over these last few days. Mathematics was never my strong point, but I made that 28 years. At my age, that's a death sentence. "So, Janie Slater," said One, "why don't you tell us everything from the start? Nice and easy, does it?" I deduced these two were detectives, smart-ass detectives, worse again. They talked like detectives, trying to be smart, but quite hollow in the brains department. Yet I was never happier to see 2 smart-ass detectives in all my life. The curtain was coming down on this horror show I brought upon myself. I was about to tell them my story when I paused. "How did you get in here?" Such a trivial detail wouldn't have bothered me, but there was a rigmarole to entering and leaving my padded cell, and I think I would have heard the jingling commotion of the locks and keys in that thick door over there with the little window. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about that," sneered Two. "We have certain privileges around here." One added, "We can open doors where there are no doors." I wasn't sure I liked the sound of that. "We're here to listen to your confession," repeated Two. I nodded. "Yes, and it's better if I go to the end and work backwards, but I'm not sure which end the end is at." I giggled like a little girl on laughing gas. Whatever mix of meds they'd given me to calm me down made my lips feel like they belonged to someone else. My mouth tingled. Yes, I must have put on one hell of a show. Between you, me, and these 4 padded walls, I'm not insane, see? Yes, I have my moments like everybody else, but I'm not batshit crazy like my neighbours along this hallway. You should see what lightning and thunderstorms do to them. That's all I'll say on the matter. I just need to seem insane. That way, I keep the ghosts at bay. They follow me everywhere, except here. They cannot get through these padded walls and my firewall of tranquilizers. I am more than happy to live out my days here at the hillside, so I'm not mad. Get it? Wink, wink. That show you witnessed a few days ago at the 112 emergency service call center, remember that? It didn't happen. I just convinced myself it happened. If I can convince myself that those children's voices spoke to me through my headset, then I can convince the world that I'm not fit for society. What I'm trying to say is that I know it's all in my head, so looking at it that way, I'm in the right place here at the mental asylum. See? Two said, "You can start at whatever end you want as long as we get to the end. Does that make sense? It's time to own up to your deadly deeds, Slater." He licked his lips as if those deeds were salty snacks. "For such a noble name," one observed, "the hillside isn't very noble," referring to the psychiatric hospital overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. "The walls of the hospital are streaked with seagull shit." "And graffiti where there shouldn't be any," interjected Two. "Have you seen the filth written inside your toilet bowl? What kind of lunatic sketches profanities down inside the U-bend of a toilet? Who would spend their time down in the sewer pipes?" Two flashed me a strange glance just then. My heart twanged in my chest. He knows something. They know something. She's trying to be all nice, while he dares to be a little threatening. They're playing good cop, bad cop. But they're not talented players, because old widow Slater is sharper than those two blunt objects, see? One quipped, potty mouth. "Okay," I said. "I know where you're going with this. You seem to know it all." And even though I knew they knew what I had done, something didn't sit right with me. "When were you looking down the toilet bowl? Why were you looking down the toilet bowl?" And that got me thinking. How long had they been in this room, watching me while I was sleeping? I came over all vulnerable. My insides fluttered. I've learned to trust my instinct, and what my instinct was telling me now was that there was something very wrong in this padded room. My eyes crept to the camera on the ceiling in the far corner of the room. I gestured to whoever was on the other side of that lens to, "Get down here now! Let me out!" Who are these people? Someone should be in here observing this. And it was true. How could the hospital staff allow a couple of detectives in here without some kind of observation? I bet you the matron is behind this. The owl seagull is a real vindictive bitch with a wicked eye, see? And she condescends to the patients. She fuels their insanity. "We need you to calm down now. You want this to be over, right?" one asked. I nodded. "Then you need to tell us your confession," she said. Two commented, "Did you know rats are crawling through the shit pipes of this loony bin? Imagine one of those things coming up out of the bowl, and you feel the bristle of whiskers on your bare ass before those gnawing incisors sink into your—" "Two," said one. "We're here to listen to her confession. By the way, they prefer the term psychiatric facility. It's more politically correct than loony bin." Two snarled, "Fuck politically correct." "What rats in the pipes?" I asked. It was then that something screamed inside me. Inexplicable fear came to me. My stomach lurched and my skin broke out in prickling gooseflesh. I felt nauseous and thought I was going to vomit. I summoned every fibre of my being to maintain my cool exterior. They weren't who they said they were. Then again, who did they say they were? Upholders of justice, named 1 and 2. Hello, but what does that even mean? 2 added, "Copper." "Copper what?" asked 1. "The shit pipes." 2 prompted, "They're made of copper." 1 snapped, "Who cares if they're made from fucking marshmallows? Can we just get this over with?" Disgruntled, 2 murmured, "Marshmallows? That won't work. Yucky." Yucky. The flesh on the nape of my neck crawled. I heard the very same word through my headset at the 112 call centre. It isn't so remarkable to hear the same word twice in the same week, but a word like yucky. Staring at me, 1 asked, "How long have you been in here?" "Shouldn't you know that?" "Just answer the question, Janie. How long have you been here?" "Since I got the call at the 112 centre, where I work. That's where I had my breakdown. Those poor children. I don't know what came over me. They're haunting me. Every time I blink, I see them in that nanosecond of darkness. At night, they come to my bed and lie with me." 1 and 2 smiled at me. And so I told my story, honestly and truthfully, for the first time in my life. I was a danger to myself and society. My unhinged mind had been festering for months. The accident took my husband and children, leaving me in a state of overwhelming grief that held my mind, body, and spirit hostage. By the time I found myself gravitating towards the playground of the local orphanage, I had given in to my burgeoning madness. I watched the children from a safe distance. I cannot describe how much I wanted to take 2 of those children home and keep them as my own and give them a loving home. I needed to fill the gap left in the house in the absence of my children. Call it a motherly need, I don't know. All I know is that I craved a little boy and a girl, see? But this time, I would never let them go. 1 and 2 exchanged glances. It wasn't difficult to lure the boy and girl away from the playground. I studied that group of children every day for 6 weeks, how they would go to the public park with their minders. They followed the same routine every day. I found a weakness. I won't tell you what that weakness was. Then I lured them to my car with some misdirection. Without ever knowing they were hostages, 9-year-old and 7-year-old James and Megan came to live with me on the outskirts of town. They lived inside the house and were never let outside, especially when the police called to the house asking if I had seen anything unusual. I homeschooled them. I paused as that old anxiety came into my padded cell like a draught from under the door. But the fear crept back. Two interrupted. Fear? The fear of losing my children for the second time. There was only one way I knew how to keep them forever. I noticed how Two shifted uneasily, while his accomplice's eyes became deep hallucinogenic pools in which I was drowning. Go on, she softly encouraged. I willed myself to go on. Little by little I poisoned them with ricin I made myself with castor beans from my castor bean plant growing in the back garden. One's eyes were swirling now, and she sounded a little wheezy when she spoke. Home produce. You must be proud. I gave the boy and girl tiny doses. They didn't suffer in the end. Just breathlessness, low blood pressure and dehydration. I intended to accompany them on their journey to the promised land where we could live forever. I swallowed enough castor bean poison to put out a piebald stallion in one go, but for some reason the poison didn't kill me. Mama always told me I had a tough constitution. It was agony, hours and hours of writhing in pain next to the dead bodies of my children. Poor thing. It must have been awful, said Two, with more than a hint of sarcasm. Maybe it was their way of getting back at you. One was struggling with her breathing. The thought crossed my mind. I gestured to the left side of my face. The ricin caused this horrible disfigurement. I called it my death mark. As opposed to your birthmark? Two's tic was getting worse. He was losing control of his facial muscles, twitching and spasming. I wondered at what point should I ask him if he was feeling okay. My death mark is my constant reminder. One laboured through her question. And then, what did you do? I buried them in the crawl space. As time went on, I felt better about having my children in the ground. It was peace of mind having them in the foundations of the house. I had control. They were safe with me. I sighed. That's one way of putting it, said Two, with a mean grin. But they haunted me. I may have buried them underground, but they're still in the house, haunting me. I know it's only my addled brain haunting me. I tried to get on with my life, happy in the knowing I had them forever, but the guilt gnawed at me while I slept. I took a job at 112 in the hope I might redeem myself by saving other lives. And did that work? Asked Two. I shook my head. That's when the bad dreams became reality. I thought it was a crank call when I called me. I called myself because I'm insane. My conscience was on the other side of that line. Silence filled the room. They always know when to come and visit. One asked, And when is that? When I'm asleep. And Two asked, Why is that? There was something about the inflection in his voice that told me he knew why. Because that's when I'm at my most vulnerable. Those whispering voices telling me they will come to collect. They said I would know it was them because they would knock once. Not on my front door, but on the underside of my bed. Something came to me just then. They pushed me to this. See, I think I could have gone on living for my remaining years with my dirty secret. They knew they would scare me into confessing. They got their death wish. And revenge, said Two, smacking his lips, is a dish served cold. They stared at me, all stone cold. With a horrible grimace, Two asked, What did they say to you? I told him what the children said. My skin crept when I realized that the detective sitting on my bed was lip-syncing my words like a terrible actor. The words used by the children, to be more precise. I sweat all over again, and I thought I was going to throw up. What was happening here? Two broke the silence in the padded cell. Now their little bodies are buried by the sewer pipes. One held me in her hypnotic stare. Yucky. There's that word again. Why are you saying that? What? Wheezed one. Isn't it yucky? Knowing that you're buried under a house by stinking sewer pipes? Isn't it a yucky insult to be buried amongst shit pipes? It's symbolic, don't you think? They're trying to fuck with my head. 2 said,
We analysed the material. It wasn't your imagination, Janie.
What do you mean? This isn't happening. 1 continued, Those 2 children you were raving about when you had the authorities brought you here were recorded right up. No, I don't believe you. Until the moment you pulled the headset off your head. And even then, they kept crying out for help. But nobody would listen. That's not true. Yes, they're driving me crazy, but it's my crazy. They don't exist. It's all in my head. Well, now it's all in your headset, smiled the woman as she stroked my hair. She then reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny tape recorder and looked as if it was from the 1970s. She pressed play and held the little device up in front of me, and I almost fainted when those muted children's voices came from the fog of white noise. They were crying and pleading to be found and let out. I screamed and I screamed again on hearing those words. My world was crashing down around me. This made little sense. I was sure they were calling my bluff, yet I heard those same voices and words.
Your workmate, Sonia?
I just about nodded.
She heard the children on your headset, and 1 other individual whose name escapes me now.
There's no need to lie. My imagination is my purgatory. There is no more that you can say or do to make this any worse. Those voices may as well be real. But they are real, said 1. I screamed on cue. They're not real. I did something terrible and I'm paying the price. I know what I've done. 1 replayed the recording. This time the static was gone from the audio and the children's voices pleaded from the speaker.
Please, help us. We're just children.
Switch it off, I cried, but those haunted words crackled from the speaker. Then came their haunting chant.
The widow Slater. The widow Slater. The widow Slater.
1 and 2 joined in the strange mantra, their voices growing louder and louder until they were screaming in my face. I closed my eyes and blocked my ears. You're not real! I screamed to counteract the piercing mantra. You're not real! You're not real! You're not! But when I opened my eyes, I wished I hadn't. 2's face was morphing into the grimacing face of the boy whom I poisoned, James. He fell to the floor in a writhing heap, and now I knew there was nobody in my room. These 2 strangers were just another product of my guilt-ridden brain. My creations were more terrifying than anything that could have come back from the shallow grave, because it was me frightening the living daylights out of myself, conjuring up these hair-raising hallucinations. Now 2's tongue came from his mouth. He smacked at his lips just like before, as if he'd just found a tasty bacon morsel lodged in his teeth. But I knew now, as the chickens were coming home to roost, only they weren't chickens. That tongue flicking was in search of water, to quench his agonizing thirst. I had seen that same thirsty gesture at the dinner table as the ricin took hold of the boy's system, with manic lip-licking. Oh, the thoughts of it! And 1 was on the floor, dragging himself around in circles, clawing at... Get me the fuck out of here! I bawled into the camera in the ceiling corner, frantically waving to be seen by 1 of the security guards. Her neck, gulping at the air like a landed sea salmon. That faint asthma wheezing I'd heard from her had graduated into red-faced retching gulps. They mouldered away, but something came from their soft skins. Children's cries replaced the adult groans and moans of this nightmare. Child ghost banshee wailing came spinning around my room at the hillside at blurring speed, screaming round and around. 2 shadows skittered across the floor from those soft adult skins, moving towards the toilet. Then I heard them calling me from the toilet cubicle, calling me with their distressed little voices. James and Megan were in there. Oh, Jesus, the children were in the toilet of dreams. Wake the fuck up, Janie. This is all just one bad dream. They don't exist. They are dead and buried, nestled amongst the pipes, right below your ensuite bathroom toilet.
Mama Jane, help.
The voices came in perfect unison. Oh, dear Jesus in heaven, but it ripped my heart in 2 to hear their little voices again. They used to call me Mama Jane. But now, between those frantic Mama Jane pleas came the splashing and bubbling of water. I fell from my bed, crawled to the cubicle and fell against the toilet bowl from where the garbled voices were coming, and I squinted into the water to see their faces peering up at me from down inside the U-bend. But how...
Jenny is down here with us, Mama Jane.
Megan bubbled. James gargled.
And Noel, too. We're best friends down here, Mama Jane. We're happy in the toilet.
A helpless whimper escaped my lips on hearing my children's names, my real children's names.
Mommy, look, it's me. It's me, Jenny. I'm in the toilet.
A childish giggle came up out of the bowl. Another titter joined Megan.
I'm Noel, Mommy. Do you remember my voice?
I lost all reason when I heard their voices. Jennifer! Noel! What are you doing down there? Jennifer and Noel were taken from me in a freak boating accident. They died in water, and here they were now, still in the water. It made strange sense. Yes, all my children were living in the U-bend of my...
Mommy, we want to get out. Help us.
Came Noel and Jennifer's fizzing voices.
Yeah, Mama Jane, help us out.
I bent over to find their faces in the water. 4 flesh-flapping, decaying little arms darted from the water. Was all I had time to utter before those splashing, pallid hands grabbed me and pulled me down headfirst into the... The 2 security guards were sitting in their little office in the bowels of the hillside. One of them was a haggard individual who had served his fair share of time as a security guard at the psychiatric facility, but the other clean-shaven man was new and in training. "Slater's having another episode," said the older individual. "Crazy as a broom handle. Ever seen a crazy broom handle, O'Connor?" O'Connor had to think about that. "No, I haven't. Who was Slater?" asked the newcomer. "Janie Slater. The press is calling her Black Widow Slater. She killed a couple of kids, orphans from the orphanage. Would you believe it? She lost her own kids in some boating accident. They drowned along with her husband. It was all very tragic. Slater never got over it, and it just disintegrated into madness. In a way, I feel sorry for the poor old bitch. She kidnapped 2 kids from the orphanage and somehow," he shook his head, "convinced herself that they were her own kids." "What happened?" "She poisoned them. Little by little she ended their lives. She was slipping them minute doses of ricin with their meals. She would have got away with it, only the town hall is laying new fibre optic cable, internet stuff." 5G? Jesus, O'Connor, 3Gs, 7Gs, what do I know? But what I know is that they found their bodies near the foundations of the house last week. They gave their little skeletons a decent burial, if such a thing exists. The state pathologist says that they were down there next to the sewer pipes for the best part of 5 years. The discovery of the bodies coincides with Slater's mental break. Maths was never my strong point, but it seems the widow heard those kids on her headset at the 112 call centre out there in the industrial estate about the same time they found the bodies. He sighed wearily. I'm not someone for the supernatural, pronouncing it as supernatural, but it wouldn't surprise me if their spirits were freed when that road crew put a hole in the ground. Ghosts, O'Connor. Huh? O'Connor looked about him. Another long sigh. Is it any wonder I want to retire early, Seeing these sad excuses for human beings, the criminally insane, have taken all the wind out of my sails, son. He huffed a tired chuckle. And I was thinking about buying a boat for my retirement. O'Connor mumbled, ironic. The old hand considered his assistant, impressed with O'Connor's sly observation. Ironic? Yes, that's the word I was looking for. The young security guard gulped as he watched the crazed woman on the camera, waving her arm, screaming something about people in her room who shouldn't be there. Shouldn't we alert the nurses or something? Son, she's been having these psychotic episodes every day for the last 7 days, screaming blue murder about the ghost that haunt her. Pardon the unfortunate pun. I guess the guilt of what she did has finally caught up with her. Loopy, was the security guard's diagnosis. Maybe we'll just let her stew for a while. The old security guard watched the monitor where Janie Slater screamed in black and white silence with a certain relish etched on his face. Those poor kids, he said to himself and anyone else who cared to listen. O'Connor pointed at the screen. What's that? What? The old dog donned his spectacles and stared at the screen. I see nothing. There's something happening off camera. The new security guard showed where he suspected something just happened below the angle of the camera. He deduced this by following the line of Slater's crazed eyes. There's nothing there, said the other man. As God is my witness, I just saw two shadows cross that floor and go into the toilet cubicle. I think you might have smoked the old devil's lettuce before you started your shift, O'Connor. Besides, he raised his bushy eyebrows, look at the state of the world. You'll need a stronger witness. They watched Janie Slater argue with nobody, fall off her bed, then crawl like an animal through the toilet cubicle door. They waited, and then they waited some more, but Janie Slater, a.k.a. the Black Widow, never came back. O'Connor asked his boss if they should go and inspect her or something. The old hand checked his wristwatch. We'll give her another few minutes. Old Janie needs to do some major soul-searching.